You don't need to watch or listen to any other cycling channel because we predict the future here, Jesse, don't we? Don't we? We do. Gravel World Championships. What the hell was that, Jesse Coyle?
I texted you on the morning after it and was like, have you seen? And you were like, shh, I haven't watched it yet. I was like, you're in for a treat. Holy mackerel.
I think I should probably re-intro that. Instead of calling it the Gravel World Championships, it was, let's be honest, the Footpath World Championships.
I mean, firstly, the thing that struck me was the field. It was a road field. It really had all the road names in it. I'm sure there were a few gravel names in there that I didn't sort of recognize, but most of the riders that they were calling out on the commentary were just road riders. So it's basically the road peloton doing a semi-gravel race, that was a big one that stood out for me. I mean, if it's a Gravel World Champs, you want to see the big gravel names particularly from the US, as we said. So they didn't seem to be there, which was...
I don't know what was going on. Okay, now obviously the backstory to this is we don't really know the preparation of it, how much warning people were given about this, but it very much looked like this tokenistic effort to get a UCI stamp. As we said last week, get their grubby little mitts on a new event. Like you mentioned that it just looked into like the road field. Not only did it look like the road riders, it was the road riders riding their road bikes. Like, so even from the perspective of like all the cycling brands who have been trying to push us onto these gravel bikes that we need, well, the Gravel World Championships, you just run your aero bike with 32 mil tires.
Yeah.
It just completely missed the mark. And like, okay, for the first time in a long time, I went back onto Twitter.
Oh, good.
I don't like Twitter normally, but I went on because I wanted to have a look at a little bit of the chat going on. And there seemed to be this thing of the American gravel scene. There is this thing, right? This gravel American scene versus the Euro scene type stuff. And I get the feeling that the American scene was very, well, you didn't invite us, you don't want us part of that, we're going to not be involved in it. And that was a massive, massive disappointment.
Well, I think they're right. It's there. Pro gravel racing is American sport, really. So I totally agree with them. I mean, Twitter essentially agreed. Like pretty much most of the stuff I saw on Twitter was people just being like, what the hell are we watching? And then the coverage was actually pretty good. Like on GCN, the stream was good, except the point you actually wanted to see, which was when Vermeesh attacked and dropped Os, wasn't there. He just sort of cut back to him and he's on his own. So that was sad. It looked fun though, didn't it? Like, so it was the worst thing to watch. Terrible. But I'm looking at it going, that looks fun. Yeah. Like as an amateur race, that'd be mint.
So so this brings up the next phase of this question, because obviously like the Gravel World Championships has a future. It's not going to go away, right? Now, I get the sense that the UCI kind of tried to broadcast that almost like a road event. That's probably one of the reasons it was so tame, is they realized, well, how the fuck are we going to like send motos up and down and around to try and follow this stuff? And, you know, we had this chat the other day about how do you watch Unbound, the actual Gravel World Championships? Well, it's this sort of stream, but it's pretty basic, isn't it? It's like you might get a bit of 4G coverage. It's that kind of thing. And I kind of feel like if they're going to do this, they almost have to embrace that. It's not going to be this highly produced thing. It's going to look like that.
Well, it's a bit of, that's like a chicken and egg thing. Do you make a course that's easy to show coverage on, which is crap to watch anyway? I think that's a lose-lose. And well, it also wasn't long. It wasn't long enough. It was so short. What was it, 4 hours or something?
Which I think is another separation seemingly between the US gravel scene here. Like Unbound is essentially this uber ultra distance event that, you know, what's it, 8 hours? Something like that?
So, yeah.
It's
big.
So, yeah. It's big. And compared to
10, maybe it's 10. Yeah, it's
research
very long. But it's an ultra endurance.
Yeah. Compared to what, a 3.5 hour?
I think it was, around 4. And they didn't have, that was the other thing, I turned it on, and they didn't have camelbacks on. They looked like it was a road race.
Mm-hmm.
So they were getting feeds because I think they were doing a circuit. So they were getting feeds from the side of the road. But I'm like, it didn't even look like a gravel race. It looked like a road race, which is part of to make it appealing. It needs to look different. It just looked like a road ride. Yeah. I don't have much else to say. I mean, it was pretty much unanimously a laughing stock of the week's news, as far as I could see.
I got one message from one guy saying, so does that mean Vermeesh won?
Yep.
Vermeesh, yeah.
Yep.
So does that mean like when they hit a gravel sector in the Tour de France, he can like Superman down and like strip out his world champs jersey and then has to sort of put it away, and Remco has to do the opposite, has to like zip up his jersey.
Brilliant.
I don't know. Look, it's going to be around for a while. There's no two ways about it. But look, it's coming to the end of the road season. I'm losing interest, Jesse, right?
Well, there was Lombardia, which was also on the weekend. I can't believe that's a monument. Really, I mean, I guess it's good to have to spread them out over the year, so there's a big deal in October. But did you watch it? I watched like the GCN like 4-minute highlights, the minimal effort. Like,
if Jay wasn't
brutal.
racing, I wouldn't have watched it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I pretty much waited till he kind of started getting tailed off and then just fast forwarded to the end.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, okay, I reckon, okay, here's my kind of thinking on this stuff at the moment. Like, Lombardia, that sort of thing, it's just another race in Italy. Do you know what I mean? A country that's just getting all these races anyway now, getting gravel world championships. I sort of feel like the Montreals, those sort of races there that are just prior to the Worlds, why don't we try and make that fifth monument potentially a movable feast, which goes into a different market? And so therefore, at least you're kind of engaging a new like population. And you could have one in Africa one year. We could have it in like, you know, Canada one year, move it around and around, as opposed to like,
It's boring. Like, I'm sick of seeing Pogacar duking it out on a climb in Italy with Enric Mas. I've seen it so many times already this season. It's getting old. I think that is a good point. Like,
and
why not?
And you're watching the same parkour as well. Like when you move it into a different city in a different country, all of a sudden it's like, oh shit, I haven't seen them race over the Golden Gate Bridge or something like that. I just think it's sort of this is the time of year that you potentially do that race, because, you know, okay, the third Grand Tour or the fourth Grand Tour being in Africa or Australia or the US is not realistic probably in our lifetime. But maybe a fifth monument is. I don't know. That's sort of my take on it.
I don't even need, maybe a monument or just some, it would be interesting to have, more finish off the UCI racing, like kind of expecting people are going to get bored and then make things more outrageous in terms of, where they are. I mean, and that Paris Tours one-day race was on. I'm just like, I literally went right to the end, watched the sprint, and
there was
the extent of
there was more gravel in that than the gravel world champs. But anyway,
really?
Last little thing in pro cycling I was going to mention to you. So Valverde, Nibali retiring.
Yeah.
Legacies there? Are we all right? Who has the greater palmares according to you?
Oh, Valverde. Yeah, for sure.
Nibali's won all 3 Grand Tours.
Yeah, but didn't he win?
I hate that chat.
That Tour de France he won, wasn't that like... I
hate this chat.
This was kind of early days for me, so maybe my memory's shot. But didn't he win that one where Froome crashed and it was sort of like, oh, you know...
I hate that attitude.
But wasn't he?
It was that one. Yeah. Yes, it was. But I hate that attitude of, but so-and-so wasn't there. But so-and-so wasn't there. I'm like, yeah, but Froome crashed and Contador crashed. Like... That's not his fault. Like, I don't know. I've always,
it's not his fault,
always
but
got
it's
me.
Still like, it still lingers. Yeah, so I'm just, Valverde is the GOAT. Like, he's such, and he's still, when's the last time Nibali got a result?
Oh, well, there's no to, I mean, as far as like the tail end of the career, like Valverde, why is he retiring? Go around again. Like, top 10. No, 100%. But for me, Nibali's San Remo win is still up there as one of the best races I've seen. Like, that was just that was before GC in my sort of time, because obviously the previous Mercksy lot generation did it, but that was the first time you saw a GC guy winning a classic and a monument, and you're like, what? How did he do that?
So his legacy for me was his descending. Like some of the most memorable descents in my mind are some of his. I can't remember specific ones. Maybe there was a Poggio one descent. But yeah, some of his, insane. So that definitely lives on. Oh, other thing, our record, that was probably the biggest thing in the news cycle for the last week. I don't have much. Yep, Ganna broke the hour record. Cool. He didn't break it. He smashed it. He absolutely flogged it. I thought it was interesting though. We did in the first or second episode, we chatted about like 3D printing, and we were like, it's dead. No one uses 3D printing. They 3D printed his entire frame with bars from titanium, and I think the frame was 3D printed aluminium, which is the first time I've ever seen that, which is nuts. Yeah, the 3D printed entire frame from the ground up kind of made us look a bit silly saying 3D printing was dead, but maybe that's the from the tech side of things, a bit of a revival for the 3D printing. So
with him smashing the record, right? So Wiggins, just from a pure numbers game, is still, from what I understand, that was still a more holy crap sort of pure numbers perspective ride. Am I right in saying that?
No. Physiologically...
Yeah, well, sorry. My question more is, like, where's the leap happened here? Is it everything?
Oh, it's in aerodynamics equipment. Yeah, massively. Power-wise, well, Ganna's a bit heavier, but their power... I think, Wigo probably did like 440, 430 for it, and Ganna probably a little bit more, but he's a lot heavier. So it's just equipment and position tweaks and all that stuff, which I'm not super into. But yeah, that's why I don't think it's the best performance they've had for the hour record, obviously. But I reckon you get a Remco, some of those other top road TT guys. I mean, they're not going to focus on it because it's just, for them, it would be a complete waste of time. But I still think with those smaller packaged riders, there's more in that record, I would say. Ganna's just too big, and his body shape, I don't think is really suited to being the best that there can be right now. I reckon but you have to put the effort and money into doing it anyway. So probably we may not ever see those guys actually do it down the track. So yeah, that's not to take away from Ganna. But
speaking of aerodynamics and wattages, a multi-sport bike race took place recently in Hawaii.
Yes.
And we saw some very interesting regulations, which I must admit, I have to kind of giggle at, right? Because here's a sport, triathlon, which has basically gone, your bikes, all bets are off, go nuts. Create whatever horrendous looking piece of like future you want, but you can't have a disc wheel.
Yep. It's a silly rule because everyone knows really that when you have a disc, it balances the wind that's pushing the front wheel, which they're running super deep front wheel. So it's a silly rule, but it's just the rule that there is. But they're getting around that this year. It was actually, for all the crapping we did on the GCN, Global Triathlon Network did a good video showing some of the tech that's there. And they've got some of the guys have this head wheel, and there's about that much spoke showing. So it's like a disc, but they've gone, oh, no, it can't be a full disc. So they've left a tiny little gap at the bottom. It's like, it looks like someone's photoshopped it. But it's like, at that point, why don't you just let them... So you can run as deep as you want, but it can't be joined at the hub. It's like quite funny. Yeah, it was pretty good. But that was, even in terms of... we were talking about covering a long gravel race and how that's boring. I mean, I went onto the live stream with like an hour to go on their YouTube stream. There was over 40,000 people watching live on like an 8-hour... race. I think that's pretty good. Pretty good numbers.
Good numbers.
More than you get on a...
What was what was the production?
Good. So they had... So commentary they had commentators, and then sort of videoing the commentators, and then cutting through. They had motorbikes following them on the run and the ride, and they must have had drones up also. Like, it was proper production. And then also, because it's quite long, they do it quite, like, they had Jan Frodeno on for interviews, so they kind of run it more as a show as opposed to just covering the race. I think the stream is helped by the fact that triathlon, because it is an individual sport, there's a lot of buy-in to the personalities of the individual athletes, which you don't get in cycling. In cycling, you get a bit of buy-in into the teams, but the way with triathlon is you kind of you go onto the live stream, they've got the full list of, they show about the top 15 of the race. So you're kind of looking for your guy that you follow, because the athletes they kind of run like businesses almost. Like their content's really good. We had a look into the stuff that the top triathletes are doing on YouTube, which is fantastic. But it really you get a lot of buy-in. Like Lionel Sanders, for example, he got like 37th, I think. Like he totally canned it, like was terrible on the day. But the amount of fans he's got just from the content he puts out is incredible. I think way much more than, I guess cycling is obviously, road cycling is a bigger sport, so you get naturally more buy-in from that. But for what they do, for what is a relatively small...
I had a bit of a look around as well, and it's interesting the way that triathletes almost portray themselves as a brand. And, they've all got, like, holy crap, social media following on these guys is just unbelievable. And it's kind of warranted, because, like, you watch their stuff, it's well produced. So breaking down some of the stuff that I saw, like each of the guys had essentially, like, they were doing vlog style stuff, because they all go on these training camps, right? That seems to be the whole thing. If you're a professional triathlete, you go on these training camps, and they have at least one person kind of filming them as such in a vlog style thing. So, if you or I are doing a vlog when we're away or something, it's basically, we're holding a camera and talking, that kind of thing. Whereas these guys will have someone, and they'll almost be presenting the day to the cameraman, which, trust me, makes life much easier. And you can also actually produce something it's a lot more candid, because, you can actually talk to the camera a lot easier. Anyway, so you had that kind of stuff going on, and then cut in a lot of really good, clever, interesting information about their training, because obviously that's the thing that all the other triathletes are watching for. I mean, yeah, they're watching it for the personality, but they want the nugget and the info and that kind of stuff. And these people are all sort of pushing their different, nutrition things, but probably their own coaching things, their own equipment stuff. And so, they're all kind of giving out bits of information like that. And I found it really interesting and really engaging. I tried to break it down, because, like, if you look at it from a cycling perspective, none of the pros do that. I mean, the biggest pro YouTuber is probably Alex. And, I'll be honest, like, I know this for a fact, that, like, he gets a bit of backlash in the world tour bubble for even doing that, right? And yet he's probably the most followed, and people kind of, a YouTube audience would go, oh, how did Dowsett do? They're kind of going in and looking, because he's an actual character to look after and look at. And so, yeah, I just think it's as a super model for trying to get people engaged in the sport.
But you never get as much buy-in to a team as you do as an individual. Yep. Like, you get that real connection with the person you're watching. Yep. I mean, maybe it's just because I'm really into training, and triathletes in general are, because if you're doing a triathlon, you are training. So it's a much more natural fit. But, like what Lucy Charles does on YouTube, documenting training, it's just, compare that to Alex Dowsett. I mean, he's doing a good job in a space that no one really does much in, but it doesn't even come close to. But they've got
the lifestyle though as well. Like the triathlete, it's just a sexier. Yeah. Like it really is. It's a sexy sport that they don't look as emaciated and horrifically like fatigued as a cyclist. Like they're full of energy. You know, they've actually got arms, so they don't look pathetic on camera. And you know, and normal tans.
And they're not driving in a bus across backcountry France to go
sexy.
to like
It really does.
That is true.
So you know, I mean, essentially, like they've got this cool lifestyle to sell. And you can see it. Like one of the ones I was watching, like they're living in a van, but like the van's pimped. My last little comment on triathlon, probably I've never spoken about triathlon as much as I have about this, but you know how there's this narrative, and it's kind of true to a sense, that triathlon is a far more, everyone says it's more friendly, right? You turn up to a triathlon and everyone's, oh, you know, welcome, how you doing, blah, 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 good luck today. Turn up to a bike race and no one will talk to you. Everyone's like, what's he doing here? Kind of thing. All right? I'm going to push back on this a bit.
Right.
Because in a bike race, I'm racing you. I want to beat you, right? You are my enemy. I'm not racing myself. I'm racing you. In a triathlon, 90-something% are racing themselves. They're racing their time. They're trying to beat their splits. And then when they get to the end, they might go, oh, shit, I came like third in my age group. That's cool. And they probably don't even know who those two people in front of them are. They're like, oh, awesome. That was really good. I'm going to get a medal, blah, blah, blah. Oh, come back next week and do a faster time. Now, yeah, there's the top end who aren't doing that. They're racing each other. But most of them are all there to just compete against themselves. Bike fondos, yeah, you're all competing against yourselves. But in a bike race, like... So there is a reason for us to be assholes to each other before a race. I'm sorry. Yep. I'm sorry. There just is. It's sport. It's elite sport.
Yep.
Sorry.
Totally agreed.
Okay.
Totally agreed.
Damn, I was hoping you might disagree.
No, that's why like when we used to go up to Calgary for the monthly time trial up there, everyone's, how you doing? How you going? Same group of guys at the start line of a crit. Hey, yep, mate. Yeah, how you going? It's very sheepish. And yeah, no, I think you're totally right.
Damn. Well, surely you will disagree with me in the comments. You'll tell me off for how toxic cycling is and all that kind of stuff. But I'm just saying there's a reason, because we're all trying to beat each other. All right, let us know, guys. All right, next up we're going to talk tech. And very rarely I'll do this, but I'm going to hand this briefly over to you, Jesse, because we need to talk about the new, quote-unquote, Wahoo Roam.
Yeah. I had to drag myself through the reviews from Shane and DC Raymark on this one because it's sad. What a sad state of affairs for Wahoo. So they released a version 2 of their marquee head unit, the Roam. Let me run you through. So firstly, it looks the exact same. So the screen is the same. It still has those huge bezels. Looking like a Tamagotchi. It's really sad. And let me read you through the updates to this thing. So firstly, it's more expensive than the previous one. It's an extra $20. New features. Multi-band GPS. Who cares? The GPS was perfectly fine on the other one. So who cares? New 64 color display. Up from 16 colors. Who cares? I have the original one with the black and white screen. What do you need colors for? More storage, up to 32 gigabytes from 4 gigabytes. They made downloading maps on the Wahoo so easy. They did a fantastic job when their units were released. You don't need the storage. You just go in, delete your map. Oh, I'm going over to Europe. Download the Europe map. Done. 2 seconds. So that's nothing. Change the buttons. The buttons were fine on the other ones. USB-C charging. Okay, that's nice.
An upgrade.
That is good, but no pats on the back for changing the charging port. The battery life is the same. Okay, that's the hardware updates. Pretty much anything in there that sparks your interest.
Yeah. No, it's a bit of a worry, I reckon, what's going on with Wahoo. Like that's now 2 upgrades in a row that have been incredibly disappointing. I mean, the latency which was essentially the reason I ditched that Wahoo Element Bolt version 2. The latency on that was just horrendous.
It was.
Switching between pages. And like I take back when Wahoo came out with that first Bolt, right? Or the Element initially, and then the Bolt. And that was like, you're like, wow, okay, this is coming from a totally different place. This is going to really like rustle up or just totally shift the whole market. Garmin's going to be like under pressure now because we've got a smart, clean, really fast. The way that it would, you could add data fields so easily and take them out. It just seems so intuitive, and where this company was headed was really, really exciting. And I got to say, ever since the Bolt that you're still running, right? You are still running that Bolt.
Yep.
They've just been like failing, really. So I don't know what's going on here, because I know they tried the watch, and I think subsequently they've even removed the watch division,
wasn't it? Yeah.
Which was super disappointing.
And they also tried didn't they have a Mini, which it was like it just mirrored the phone? I think that was or was that the Garmin? No, it was Wahoo had a Mini. I think that was a bit of a flop, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And then because we talked about on one of the other shows about the Garmin, how the solar version, and you're looking at this thing going, well, the bezels are bigger than the Garmin, and that thing charges itself.
And it's a direct competitor. I mean, that is going straight for the navigation, ultra distance. This primarily is used as a navigation tool for long bike rides. Who is your direct competition? Well, clearly it's the 1040 Solar. And even the 1040, which has just kicks its ass when it comes to all the features on Garmin. So I can't believe I'm sitting here in 2022 and big upping still a Garmin device. Like, I was, as you probably all remember, a bit of a Garmin hater for a long period of time. And
I still am. I'm like a reluctant Garmin. It's like I still prefer the Wahoo, but I'm like, I'm sitting there with how old is that Wahoo Bolt thing I have? It's like I still have absolutely no reason to want to upgrade. And like I would upgrade. I'm kind of now, if I needed a new head unit, I'd honestly be looking at that Garmin Solar, which is madness.
Get off grid.
I mean, looking at these, there's 3 software updates, which are just pathetic. So now you can sync Wahoo system outdoor workouts. Who cares? Who uses Wahoo system? Added Wahoo Roam backup restore. It's so easy to set up who needs a backup? And Super Sapien sensor integration. Okay. Like that's it. That's the software update. Do you navigate with your head unit? Do you ever follow a route?
In Centennial Park.
Anyway.
So when I'm not in Sydney, yeah.
Because this is what I don't get, right? So I've traveled a lot with that Wahoo, US, Europe, heaps of times, and you bring up the map and it has that little chevroned breadcrumb trail. And for me, that is absolutely fine. I don't use the cue sheets. I don't need the turn by turn. I don't need colors. To me, like the detail that gives on the original Bolt is more than enough. So when these head units update with all these this is not really relevant to this update, but just in general, they're constantly updating the routing. And I'm like, do people need that? Like when you follow on the Garmin, isn't it just following the line overlaid on the map?
I don't know whether we are completely out of touch with the rest of the cycling population, but I feel like there are a lot of people who like all that additional features. And the only reason I say that is I've been testing this app Navigator on the Apple Watch. Okay, and the developer is constantly pushing navigation upgrades, navigation features, way home, trace back, all these navigation things on the device. And I'm there going, I just need a line to follow, which I'll pre-upload. That's all I need. I don't need anything else. And he's desperate to continue to. I'm pushing him to add, my interval power, an interval metric that tells me reviews my previous, all the stuff that I want, right? And he's like, I don't need that. This is the stuff. And so I would agree with you that I feel like a lot of that stuff is fluff, but maybe we're completely out of the loop with it. But even like when I was in the States last, I would pre-upload my route onto at the Hammerhead at the time, And all I wanted was the line to follow.
Yeah, the line on top of the map,
Yep.
so you can see what street.
That's all I
Sure,
wanted.
like, isn't that enough?
Yeah. And what I've always found really annoying is the recalculation. Like, because you'll miss a turn or something, and I don't want it to recalculate. I want to see what that original line, that original path was, and I can determine my way back to that path. I hate when the little 8 megabytes of RAM decides to do a recalculation and will send me via Afghanistan to get back to the original course point, because it always does that thing of like, oh, well, your original course point was back there, so you've got to go back there to get back onto the course. Whereas I know with your screen, with your little chevrons, it's just like, oh, they're over there. We'll make our way over to that at some point. Yeah,
and you do it because you just zoom in and out, and you say, oh, I'll just take that street and I'll be back on.
Yeah. So I don't know. I feel potentially we're out of the loop with this one,
Possibly.
but I think we can all agree that I'm really concerned for Wahoo, just bringing it back to Wahoo for a second, that I don't think they'll be around by the end of the decade. I said that before here, I think, but yeah, I'm a bit worried about that. Anyway, guys, let us know your thoughts. Where are we headed? Did Zwift get enough backlash for just rebranding a jet black trainer? Like,
they rebranded it and sent really good installation instructions. And that was
literally, like I had one here. I'm like, that it was dead set the same thing. I just couldn't believe that was just. I got no problem with it, but everyone's like, oh, they're reinventing the wheel. I'm like, no, they just slapped some branding on a jet black, which is Aussie company. Well played, good stuff.
Is it?
Yep.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. But yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Earlier on in one of the episodes, I was asking you a little bit about fueling short rides, okay? And I know that you want to have a quick chat about a recent study that was released in terms of glycogen levels and fueling.
It was just an interesting one because it kind of goes against a common way people describe refueling, which is like a car's gas tank. Yeah. So firstly, it only applies if you're really training a lot. If you train 8 or 9 hours a week and you have 1 or 2 rest days, you're probably all right because you naturally refuel across those rest days. But if you're training more than about 12 hours a week, this could apply to you. And what the study kind of showed, just really simply, is that if you do a session that somewhat sort of depletes you, and then you go out and try and do intense efforts the next day, it's not good enough to people, because what people will say would be, oh, I'm a bit glycogen depleted, but I did some refueling, so I think my gas tank's sort of half full.
That's the key point, the gas tank.
Yeah.
Because that's the way I'd always thought, right?
Yeah. So you go out for a session the next day and you're like, did a big session yesterday, I've got some efforts today, I'm probably about half full, right? So what this study was looking at, is if you're half full, if a car's half full, right, you can still drive the car as fast as you want. It's just going to go empty quicker. What they found in this study, though, is that in the human body with muscles, it's not the same. So what they found was if you are, let's say, half glycogen depleted, and they did this by doing a training session one day and then refueling, one group refueling with carbs, one group refueling with low carbs. So that one group was starting the next session fully replenished, essentially, and one not depleted. They weren't totally tanked, but they were sort of what you would say was sort of half refilled. And what they found was the group that was half full still had a performance decrement compared to the group before. And the reason for this is because when your muscles are, let's say, half full, it's not like every individual muscle fiber is half full. Some are fully depleted and some will be fully ready to go, which means when you're then doing your exercise, some of those muscle fibers just don't have anything left really to give. So then you have a performance decrement. So it is your human body in terms of refueling is not like a car being half full.
Yeah, it's not like, I'm going to go do a 3-hour bike ride, and for an hour and a half of that, I'm going to be at full tilt, and then I'll just hang on for the last hour and a half. That's not how it's going to work. It's depleted. The whole 3 hours will be depleted at whatever the percentage decrease is from the day before.
Exactly.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, and so there's a few ways to look at it. So just in terms of like refueling, in this case, more is better. half refueling, so you're not just getting through, so you're not totally cooked, isn't as good as being fully replenished, which is a bit of a misconception people might have. And then also the RPE was lower in this study. So in the group that was half refilled, firstly, their power output was lower in the sprints that they were doing in the subsequent test, but also the RPE was higher. So you could be doing the same session as, your twin brother, but you're doing less power and it feels harder.
I think we all know that feeling. Yeah.
So it's a double prong. So if you did refuel, you could do the same session as your brother and it would just feel easier, which is a win-win. Or you could do more power if you wanted to do that. So just an interesting sort of something I don't know if people watch my channel, but something I kind of bang on about in terms of potentially trying to overfuel and make sure you're always on top of glycogen. And this was the first time I'd sort of seen a study that actually, it was a very complex, very simplified it. They did muscle biopsies and things like that, but they've actually looked at it, and that's why. It's because, being half replenished, you still can't run at full speed.
So fueling on a bike, right? So we were talking about this the other day, and one of my treats that I like are donuts. Mm-hmm. Okay. And I had someone suggest to me, you should eat your treat, therefore, on the bike while you're riding. Mm-hmm. Okay. Because the theory being, your body's going to be burning this so fast that, you still get to eat your treat and it doesn't sort of do a big disservice as it once did. But I'm like, if I'm going to eat my treat, I want to enjoy it. There's nothing enjoyable for me about when I'm on a bike riding, digging, into my sweaty back pocket, glooping out some sort of slopped up donut and shoveling it into my face at 140 BPM. That's not the point of the treat. And you sort of said to me, well, and plus it's really bad fuel. You're not even getting good benefit out of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it is a very common. This came up similar thing in the sort of a discussion with one of the riders I coach, and it's a weird way to do things anyway, because just from a purely a psychological, a diet perspective, what you eat during a ride, it kind of just goes. You don't register it. It kind of just goes down the hatch. Yeah, some stuff tastes a bit better, but if you have your donut while you're doing a ride, you're still going to get to 8 o'clock at night after dinner and you're going to be, you want your treat. So if you've already eaten it when you've gone for your ride
and didn't enjoy it
and didn't register it, you're still going to want it.
Yeah.
And plus, here's the thing. If your treat is pure carbohydrate, if for some weird reason your little sweet treat is a bag of lollies, then I could sort of understand, because the way carbohydrate is taken up while you're exercising is different. You don't get the insulin spike. It's straight through your bloodstream into the working muscles. There's a pathway there that's useful. Fat, on the other hand, doesn't change. Exogenous fat that you eat isn't oxidized, isn't used differently because you're exercising. So in the same way, that 20 grams of fat in that donut you have while you're riding is the same physiologically as it would be having it at night, which is not the same with the carbohydrate. So even from a fueling point of view, there's no advantage to eating your fatty food treat while you're riding. So even I don't really see any way you look at that, it being beneficial. I mean, don't waste your treats when you're riding. Treats. I mean,
yes, God. That was kind of my comeback on that as well.
Yeah. A group ride's dead. The club run. Because we were riding out down south on, when was that? That was Saturday, riding out there from the eastern suburbs from pretty much the center of the city down past Waterfall, which is a classic Sydney club run. All the clubs, we've probably got 5 or 6 clubs that used to run rides out there to Waterfall and back on a Saturday morning, about 80 Ks. You ride out there in a group, you roll turns on the way back. There's a bit of a section everyone races on. And it used to be popular. I mean, that was how I got into group rides when I first started riding. My dad has never been a member of a cycling club, but when I was a kid, every Saturday he'd get on his bike, Saturday morning, he'd go out there and he was the tagger honorer.
Oh.
And he'd come back. So this is before I was even riding. He'd come back And he'd retell this. Oh yeah. So I went out with Ranwick, tagged onto them, jumped onto Easts for the way back, bit of a race back, and tagged on with so and so. And he'd have this story of the clubs, right? And that was like, you'd go out there on a Saturday morning, and there was group after group after group from all the different clubs going through. I mean, we were going out there pretty late. We missed the morning rush, really. But there seems to be less buzz around the whole group club ride in that sense. Is that, is it dying off from COVID?
I was reading some stuff. Well, you just mentioned right at the end there from COVID, right? Now, I was reading some stuff during the week, and it was talking with people who had picked up the sport during COVID, right? So that there's this whole, obviously, flood of people that got into the sport during COVID. And when they did, they got into the sport essentially as individuals, because that's what we were all doing. We were by ourselves, riding around, okay? And then, so since picking things back up, that experience of how you actually got into the sport, which was normally for most people a group ride somewhere from point A to point B and back, had changed. It wasn't the group ride that started, it was the person by themselves starting it. And now subsequently going along, people aren't picking that up. Now, I think a little bit of this is, I'm sorry, but people thinking they're too good for it.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay. Yeah. Do you think as in, people seem to start their own little groups, don't they? It'll be like the 3 or 4 mates that just do their rides together as opposed to joining the club.
That was me, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
We had a group of 5 or 6 people go out Saturday morning, meet up, go do our ride, have our coffee afterwards, etc. I wasn't a club person till much later on, but I kind of feel like, and this maybe, I think this kind of takes us into the whole, because this is us now, this is you and I in our life at the moment, right? Is training time and the time that you ride is now it's more fluid, it's more flexible for a lot of people, just because of the nature of now working from home and flexible hours and all that kind of stuff, that there's a move away from that structured time. Are you seeing that?
Yeah, I'm seeing. Yeah, actually, I'm seeing that. In coaching, yes, there's more people that have that flexibility, and then are then sort of, well, when should I ride? Because I don't need to be home by 7:30. Because that was always the thing when I first got into it. When 2015, it was like, everyone would be at the meet for the club at 5:30, coffee at 7:30, you'd be home by 8 because you got to get into the office. And now, because that's not the case, people are like, well, I don't want to get up at 5 in the morning to ride if I can just go ride at 6:30, be at my desk at 9 at home. So yeah, maybe is that a bit of a stretch? But I don't think it is. I don't think that's a stretch. I reckon that would be having an impact on the club numbers being down. Although the other thing is, we could be totally making this thing up because we haven't been to Waterfall at 6 a.m. on a Saturday morning. But maybe it's no. I think it is true, because I was riding with Andy Matthews from SU Velo the other day, and he did a ride out to Waterfall, I think back through the national park. And it was a group of 6, from SU Velo. That used to be, you'd have 20 guys rolling turns on the way back. Maybe people don't want to do that anymore.
I do love a good group ride, don't get me wrong, but yeah, I kind of feel like potentially we're at a bit of a turning point with them. I'm not sure. Anyway,
I think we are, but I think it's sad. Yeah. That's how people get in, should be getting into stuff, because you do a group ride and then you're like, well, maybe I could go and pin a number on, and that pathway it seems to be deteriorating.
Yeah. Right. Let us know, guys, your thoughts. What is the future of a group ride? Right, episode 6, run and done. Stay tuned. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, guys. We've got some adventures coming up at the end of the week, so stay tuned. We'll be making some announcements on that. All right. Talk to you soon.
See ya.
I like that.